So, good night once again to everyone. Welcome to another class once again. So, we're continuing chapter 7.3 and we're continuing to look at what can we use to develop a spreadsheet. So, we started off with functions. So, we looked at a few functions. We looked at average, we looked at count A, count, and then we stopped at date. So, just a quick question. When it comes to functions, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in this class here, but I think I would have mentioned it. When it comes to functions, there are three things you need to remember about functions. Anybody remembers them or know what I'm talking about? No one? Alright, so the first one I had mentioned is that when it comes to functions, you need to remember what is the name of the function. Anybody remember me saying that?
No, sir.
Sir.
No? Alright, so we'll take down these 3 points that you should remember for each function. One, you should remember the name of the function. So for example, the name of this function here is average. So the first thing you should remember about a function. What is its name? The second thing you should remember is what is it used for? Or what does it do? That's the second thing you should remember about a function. So, what is its name and what is it used for? So in this case here, this function here, it is used for calculating average. So that's the second thing you need to remember. And the last thing you need to remember is the syntax of the function. Well, I can actually add a fourth part now. So the third part is to remember what is the syntax. The syntax is basically what is the structure of the function. So just like how if you were to create a formula, you would say 6 multiplied by 6 and then plus 3 and you equal that and you get an answer. So that's your formula. So a function basically has a pattern to it, and that is called the syntax. So you start with the equal sign, the name of the function, and in brackets you put the parts that will be calculated. So for example, that will be equivalent to put in 6 times 6 plus 3 and so on. So that entire part there is called the syntax. Each function has its own syntax. For example, if we look at count if, it's equal count if, in open bracket, range of cells, comma, criteria. That's the entire syntax. So that's the third thing you need to remember when it comes to functions. And the fourth part is the arguments. What are the arguments the syntax requires? So for example, the argument can range from no argument, 0 arguments, all the way to basically how much ever it asks for. So from 0 going up. So it can be 0 arguments, 1 argument, 2 arguments, and so on. This case here, this one has 1 argument. This one here has 2 arguments. You can tell by the comma inside it. Comma separates the arguments. This one here has 3 arguments. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So So one person tell me back, what's the first thing you need to remember about the function?
The name.
The name of the function, good. What is it?
What it's used for.
What is it used for? Great. Third,
The syntax or structure of the function.
great. And lastly, what is the last one?
Sir, the argument the syntax requires.
Right, the arguments. So basically, we break it down the syntax into the arguments. What arguments does it require? So those are the four important things you should remember about a function. Name, what is it used for? What is the syntax? And what is the um, arguments? Good. So obviously, we know average is going to calculate average. Um, so we have three different counts. Does anybody remember the difference between the three different counts? All right, so what is count used for?
The numbers in a range. It counts the numbers in a range.
Numbers in a range. Okay, someone else?
Or numeric data.
Numeric data. Yes, it counts the numbers in a range. It counts numeric data. But more specifically, how does it count it? Does it add up everything and say a total of 200 is in all of these cells, or how does it count it?
Sir, it counts the amount.
The amount, or basically if there's data in the cell, right? So it's not, say if we have one here in a cell and we have five here, it doesn't count one and five and say that is six. Rather, it is counting if data is in the cell. If data is in the cell. So if it has the specific type of data that it counts, it is going to count that data. Good, but you guys were on the right track. So it counts numeric data inside of the cell. What is the count A count?
That counts numeric data as well as text.
Good. Numeric.
Sir, it basically counts all general data.
Right, all general data, all types of data it would count. So text, symbols, anything that is in a cell. Now, count if counts based on a criteria. I think I had mentioned in a class that count only counts that if we look at this first part here, I think I would have said it only counts numbers, but that was incorrect of what I said. Um, the count if counts based on the criteria, whatever the criteria is. So whatever it is looking for, that is what it will count. So I had given you guys some examples like less than 10, more than equal to, less than equal to, not equal to. Those are some questions, criteria with numbers. But you can actually use count with words. That's something I actually I didn't mention. You can actually use count with words, or say for instance the same count A. So count if is basically a combination of count A and count. But does that we tell it what to look for. So let me give you an example. So say we have a list of pass and fails. So pass, fail, pass, pass, fail. Um, Let me copy that, paste it. Good. So we want to count basically how many pass and how many fail. So you guys can basically help me to build the if the count if. So we start equal count if open bracket. What is going to be our range? What should be our range?
Sir, B2 to B11.
B or D?
B9.
Correct. So D2 to D11 because that is where our data is located. So that is our range. Good. So now my criteria, if it was numbers, here we could have said less than 10 and in our criteria. Close brackets. What's happening? There is a problem with the formula. Equal minus. Um, okay. So yeah, I missed out the double quotation mark there. So in this case here, it's looking for anything less than 10. Now, if we wanted to look for a specific word, same double quotation mark, and we can actually type in the word. So I can type in pass, and it's going to count how many pass is in this range here. So in this range, I have 6 pass. So if I recreate another one, count if my range D11, D2 to D11, comma, quotation mark, fail, close bracket, I have 4 fails. So the count if criteria counts based on the criteria. The count if function counts based on the criteria. Whatever is in the criteria section is going to look for that data, and if it finds it in the range, it will count it. So if I look for the word road, there is no road, but if I replace one of them with road, I now have 1. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I heard no. Somebody said no.
Sir, it wasn't me, but I don't understand.
What you don't understand, Kevin?
Sir, I just want you to go back where you do just now.
All right. So let me work with numbers first. So do you understand the count function?
Yes, sir.
Count by itself. So if we have a bunch of numbers here, the count function equal count, and we put this as a range. It's counting this range of data. So basically we have 5 twos here. So you understand up to there so far, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. So what the count if does now, so with the count, it basically counts everything. So no matter what you have in this range here, doesn't matter what the number is. Notice how long I'm making these numbers. Notice how some of them are small. It's still going to count it as 5 because it's just the normal count function. It's just counting if data is in the cell. So this is basically if data is in the cell. That is for count. But the count if now, as one we're looking at, that counts based on a criteria. That counts based on a question. So not just if we have data, but if there's a certain type of data. For example, say for instance we want to know if there's any 24 in this range. So in that case, we can use a count if. So we say equal count if. We put the same range because remember that's the structure, that's the syntax, range. So just like the count function. But now we want a criteria, what basically to look for. So in this case here, we're going to look for 24. That's our criteria. We're going to tell it to count any 24. So if you notice, we have 124. So this is our criteria. It's looking for a criteria. So if I change another number to 24, I'm going to get 2. If I change another one, I'm going to get 3, and so on. You following that so far?
Yes, sir.
Good. So the count if is looking for that criteria. So if I change this to anything, it doesn't matter what you put there, it is going to look for it. So if I put 6,000, there is no 6,000 there. It's going to show up as 0 until I type in 6,000 at the top here. Then notice I have a 1 now. So going back to what I was just showing, say for example, we have a list of students. We have a list of students, and we want to know if they pass or they fail. We want to know if they pass or they fail, and we want to basically count if they pass or they fail. And that's basically the function that I created here with the count if. So equal count if, the same range, which has all the data of the passed and the fail, because remember that's where it has to count. So it's looking inside of this range, and this is my criteria now. This is basically what I'm telling it to count. I'm telling it to count all pass. So if you see the word pass, count it. So in this example here, I have 5 students that got pass. If I want to know how many got fail, I basically do the same thing, but I put fail instead. So now it's going to look for all of the fail. I have 5 students that would have failed. Think you follow it now?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
All right. Anybody else with any other questions? Actually, cut this thing. Please remember these classes are for you to learn. So if we're gonna go through it and you're not gonna understand, then I don't know what is the purpose of the class in the first place. So as Kelvin just did, if you do not understand anything, let me know so that we can go it over again. Alright, so I think that's basically it for the count if function. So, well, average should have been simple for you guys. It counts based on the range also. Gives you the average. Count if.
Sir,
Yes.
sorry, I wasn't finding the mic just now. I have a lot of questions about what you were doing just now
Mhm.
with the counting function. Sir, I was wondering, how is it that the fact that the field near the candidate's name, it's spelled in all caps, and how is it that it doesn't affect the formula?
But basically, the it's not case sensitive, so it's not looking at if it's all caps or not. It's just looking at if there's an F, if there's an A, if there's an I, not whether if it's capitalized or not.
Okay, sir.
Because remember the same for functions also. If we ever type in a function, say for example we type in a function in lowercase, it doesn't affect it. Um, Notice it went uppercase. It automatically changed it to uppercase. So the system doesn't differentiate between lowercase and uppercase. Any other questions? So we should know that the count A counts all types of data, count only counts numbers, and we just looked at the count if, which counts based on that criteria. And remember, the criteria could be anything. It could be any question. It could be looking for a word, or it could be looking for numbers that um, ask a certain question. Is it going to look for 24? Is it going to look for less than 10, greater than 10, equal to 10? Whatever the case may be. The question could be anything. The criteria could be anything. And then, but we already looked at dates. So remember, date has the arguments of year, month, and day. We looked at also the today date. So remember that has no arguments. So remember I said there's some functions with zero arguments. This is one of them. Um, and based on the function, we'll determine how many arguments it requires. Alright, so if no questions on any of those functions, let's move on to our new function. And that is the if function. Now, let's see. Alright, Tamika, you want to read for us?
Sure, sir. If the syntax is if open bracket logical test, comma value if true, value if false. This function allows you to make a choice depending on whether a condition is met or not and returns one of two values. Suppose you have decided that if you spend an average or more than $10 on lunch, then you should make your own lunch the next week. The if statement is useful to determine whether you should continue to buy lunch or make your own lunch.
Good. So, the if statement or the if function is basically used like it's similar to asking a question also. So, notice this word condition. That's a term you should remember. Condition is also like asking a question. It's basically if something is the case or this is the scenario, then what will happen? So say for example, um, you're going to the canteen. You're in school. You're going to the canteen. Pretend when it was years ago and you used to go to the canteen, and you go to the canteen, and well, basically it's break time, and you want to buy an egg ball. Whole morning you're thinking about this egg ball. You're thinking about I'm gonna buy this egg ball and cut it in half and I put some a nice sour on it, and I'm gonna eat this egg ball during break. Now you cannot go to the canteen. Somebody come, a teacher come and said that oh you can't go to the canteen. Help them out and do something. So you tell one of your friend, go to the canteen and buy this egg ball for you. Now, when you send this friend to buy this egg ball, what is the question your friend gonna ask you?
If you want any soul.
If you want anything on
If
it.
you want to, so
If if correct, if you want sour, But if they don't have egg ball, if
What else you want? If you get egg, what else you want?
exactly, if the Auntie Dan doesn't have egg ball, because your friend doesn't want to walk up and down. If Auntie Dan doesn't have any egg ball, what you want? So that's basically the if function. It's gonna have a test, and that's basically the condition. The condition is if Auntie Dawn got egg ball, then I'm going to buy the egg ball. Your friend is going to buy the egg ball. And if she doesn't have egg ball, what are you going to do? Buy nothing or buy something else? So that's basically the condition. If she has egg ball or if she doesn't have egg ball, something will happen. Either way, something will happen. So that is basically the arguments that you're seeing here. There's a test. So the test is basically like, does Auntie Dawn have egg ball? If it is true, then whatever is in this part of the argument will be carried out. So say for example, it's true, Auntie Dawn does have egg ball, so they're gonna buy the egg ball. And what's basically gonna happen, this false part is ignored because you already carried out one part of it. It's false, so you can't do anything there. Um, she does have egg balls, so you're going to do the true part. But if she doesn't have egg ball now, then that is false. She doesn't have egg ball. So you're gonna carry out whatever is in this false section and you're gonna ignore the true part. You guys think you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So I understand the ball scenario, but I still don't know how to apply it to actual data.
Alright,
But I have understanding of where this is going.
we get into there. So once you understand the anti-dance situation, you're gonna understand the if function. So when it comes to the if function now, we are going to run that similar test, just like how we were asking a criteria in the count if something is less than, if something is more than, if it is greater than, if it is equal to. That is basically our test here also. It's all related. That's why they use different terms. Questions, criteria, logical tests. It's basically similar. So in a case scenario, in this example here, the amount spent on lunch. So we have the days, Monday to Friday, and we have how much, say for example, Keslin spent. So on Monday, she spent $15. On Tuesday, she spent 25. On Wednesday, she spent $10. Thursday, she spent 13. Friday, she spent 14. So they use the average function here to calculate the average. So on a weekly average, Keslin is spending $15. A whole 3,000 she's spending on lunch every week. Now, they're running an if function at the bottom here. So it starts with the equal, the name of the function, in this case if, and remember the three syntax, the three arguments. It has a test, it has a true value, and it has a false value. So the first part is the test. It's going to ask a question. It's in this case here, it is asking, is B8 greater than 10? Is B8 greater than 10? So B8 is going to be that average number that was calculated here. So that's going to be that $15. So it's going to run a test. Is B8 greater than 10? So in this case here, is 15.4 greater than 10? Now if it is true, remember the true part of the syntax, which is the second part here, true, that is what will appear. That's what it will be carried out. But if it was false, the second part, the third part of the syntax, that is what would have been carried out. That's what would have showed up. So if you notice here on the right hand, the word yes appeared because B8 is greater than 10. Now it's the same just like the count if criteria. Whatever you had put inside of this section here is what will appear. So if we look at our own example now, we can actually use back okay, we actually can make some grades. So let me give you guys an example with grades. So 60, 30, 70, 40, 20, 90, 30, 70, 60, 20. Good. So we're checking to see this is the grades, the pass or the fail, and so on. Now. So now we're checking to see if anybody got any grade greater than 70. So we can do the equal if the logical test, and I'm not sure if we can use a range. No, that's going to be for counting. The if function is going to be used for a single value. So in this case here, let me try it on a range. Just give me a second. Let me try and see if it will work. If that is greater than 70, I don't think it will. Yeah, not gonna work. As the range won't be able to compute. So if test this range here, this cell here, is it greater than 50, then we could actually say in quotation mark pass. So this is actually an example of something that I do for my grading, and for the false part we can see fail. So what I'm doing here, the if function is running a test if this value here is greater than 50, and whatever is in this true part, if it is true, if it is in fact greater than 50, that is what will be carried out. And this false part here, this fail, is going to be ignored. If it is false, then it will be carried out. So let me complete it. So ignore this section over here. Let me scroll over. Good. So we're running a test. Is F2 greater than 50? Yes, it is, and we're going to get pass. So if we get anything lower, say for example 40, we are going to get fail. So now if I actually bring it down, copy it to the other cells, it would show me who passed and who failed. So in this case here, well, let me delete, zoom out, and delete this here, and delete these columns. So now I actually have your grades, and based on that if function, I can say whether you passed or you failed based on this standard here. Now if I put the word succeed, and I copy that down, that's what will appear instead of fail. If instead of fail I put what's the opposite of succeed? That is what exactly will appear. If you put 1 here and you put 2 over here, whatever you put, that is what will appear. It all depends upon the test. whatever the test is. Is it greater than 50? I can now say, is it greater than 60? And that is what will be carried out. So yes, it is greater than 60, or no, it is not greater than 60. So we have our yes and no there. You guys think you understand, or did I confuse you?
I understand, sir.
Anybody confused?
No, sir. Sir, you want to go this part again for the less fortunate, aka me?
Alright, so let's see. So to simplify it, the if function is basically going to look at a cell. So obviously in a cell you're going to have data. So the data can either be a number, it could be a word, it could be anything. And you want to test the cell to see if it has that data, that specific type of data, and then to do something. So it's like going back to that situation with Auntie Dan. If she has the egg ball, buy the egg ball. If she doesn't have the egg ball, buy channel. So with this example here, we want to know if this cell has the number 20. So we can say equal if cell B2 is equal to 20. Does it have the number 20 inside of it? And if it does have the number 20 inside of it, say yes. If it doesn't, say no. So yes, it does in fact have the number 20 inside of it. So we see in yes. And if I change it to any other number, we are going to see no. So it all depends on the test. Now if I change it to greater than, is B2 greater than 20? Then every time, every number that I put above 20, we're constantly seeing yes. Unless I put anything below, then we are going to see no. Following? So whatever
Yes.
whatever's in the true part, whatever's in the false part will be carried out. Now notice so far we're only using words and numbers, so I can actually say 20 should appear or 40 should appear, and that could work also. So there are going to be some cases where you might want numbers appear, or there might even be a case where you want a calculation to be carried out. Say for example, if B2 is greater than 20, then take B2 and add it. So in this case, it's going to be a formula. So we need to take away the quotation mark. Take B2 and add 20 to it. And if it is false, take B2 and minus 20 from it. So that there is another situation where we can use the true part and the false part. We can carry out calculations. Because remember I mentioned, whatever you have in that true part, whatever you have in that false part, can be carried out. So, is it greater than 20? 40 is greater than 20. And we add the 20 to 40 and we get 60. If we type 10, 10 is less than 20, so we get the true, the false part. So that's going to be 10 minus 20, and we get a negative 10 here. So there are some cases where you might want to do calculations. Say for instance, I'm going to give you Say for instance you're creating a spreadsheet about selling items. Say for example this is an item, we're selling chocolate, and this is the price. The price is 500 for the chocolate. And say for instance we are only going to discount items unless it's greater than 1,000. So in this case, we could create a discount column. Discount equal if. So we're testing if this price here is it greater than 1,000, because we're only going to give discount if it is greater than 1,000. So if it is greater than 1,000, I want you to calculate the discount. So our discount is going to be let's see, 5%. So that's going to be 500 multiplied by 5%. And if it is false, sorry, that's supposed to be the cell instead of the actual number. That's supposed to be B2 multiplied by 5%. And if it is false, $0 as discount. So I have a 0 here because it's not greater than 500. So say now we're selling it's a Pepsi. For some reason it's 1,200 for this Pepsi. So if we bring down now, copy our formula, we have a $60 discount. So it's going to look at B3, check to see if it is greater than 1,000. Yes, it is greater than 1,000, and we're going to calculate our discount. We're going to multiply B3 by a 5%, and we get $60 here. So we can actually convert all of this, format it as currency, so that we can see our dollar signs and so on. And this is basically how persons would calculate discount, calculate VAT, calculate total, and all of those things. You guys think you understand?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any questions? Any questions? All right. So once again, remember the syntax for the if function. You run a test. The test could be anything, just like your criteria for your count if. It can be anything also. Basically a question. Is it less than? Is it equal to? Whatever the case may be. So we could even do a word. Where did I have one like that? We could have even done a word. Is it equal to? Does it have the word chocolate? Or would I have to put that in quotation marks? Right. So if I change this to chocolate, then yes, it does have chocolate, and no, it doesn't have chocolate. So yes, it does have chocolate. So this is my test here now. Does B2 have the word chocolate inside of it? Yes, it does have chocolate. So yes will appear, that's a true. So if I change it to anything else, I'm going to get no. That's the false part here. So these criterias, these questions, these tests, it's basically the same operators you're going to use. Is it equal to? Is it less than? Is it greater than? Whatever the case may be, that is your test. So you can test for a word. Is it equal to a word? Does it have a certain word? Or if it doesn't have a certain word, and based on that test, if it is true, this part is going to be carried out, or if it is false, this part here will be carried out. Alright, so moving on, if there's no questions on the if function, so we're going to look at max now. If there's anyone with any questions, you still are confused about the if, please raise the questions now. This is one of the most important functions for you to remember. You're actually going to be using it in your SBA exercises in the future. Alright, so max and min, those are simple functions. They give you the maximum value, they give you the minimum value based on your range. And please remember the name. Some of you might get a little mixed up, and you might say the name of the function is maximum, and the name of the function is minimum. But please remember it's the shortened word max and min. And some persons get confused also with average. They might do the reverse. They might say that max and min is the name, so average should automatically be AVG, shortened average, but no. You have to remember exactly what their names are spelled as. The full name of average, and the shortened max, and the shortened min. So it's a simple function. It's just using the range of cells. So if we can find a list of numbers. Okay, so with the grades here, we can look for the max grades and the minimum grades. So who got the highest grade and who got the lowest grade? So equal max, and we highlight our range. So the highest grade is 90. Let me put some space so that we can differentiate. And equal min, highlight our range here. And our lowest grade is going to be 20. Are you guys following? Great.
Yes, sir.
Alright, good. So those should be two simple functions to understand. For some reason my computer is moving very slow. You guys hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Because usually when it starts moving slowly, my audio starts breaking up. So if you're not hearing me clearly, let me know. Alright, so moving on, max and min, we're finished with that. So another useful and kind of tricky function is the PMT function. So we have a few business students here. Does anyone know what is the process for a loan and paying back a loan? How do you know how much you have to pay back a loan? So you take a loan, how much do you have to pay back? Does anyone know the process?
Sir, don't they usually calculate your income rate and the taxes you have to pay every month, sir?
Okay, I guess that's correct, but that was a bit too technical. So what I was basically asking is that you actually get the money, but remember when they give you apply for a certain amount of loan. So say for instance you apply for a $2 million loan. They would usually give you an interest rate. And that interest rate is basically how much they want back. And they would usually also tell you how long you have to pay back this loan. So they might say that if you take a $2 million loan, you have maybe a 5 years to pay off this loan, and we're expecting an interest of maybe 2% on that repayment every year. You guys know about that? You understand there? Or you guys didn't know that?
Kind of understand, but not too
You.
sure.
Alright, well, that's basically how the bank would work. You tell them how much you want, and based on how much you want, they would give you an interest rate. That's why persons go to different banks, because different,
Oh, yes, sir. I knew that.
right, but different banks have different interest rates, and they have different payback periods, and depending on those two values, they will determine basically how much you have to pay back, and if it's too much or if it's too little and all of that. So that is basically what the PMT function is for. It is to help you calculate how much you have to pay back every month or every year, however you want to do the calculation. But it's basically for loan repayment. Alright, so let's have a reader for the two paragraphs. Sierra, could you read for us? Do we have Sierra?
The, the syntax is equal to PMT open bracket interest rate, comma, number of payments, comma, loan amount, close brackets. The PMT function is a financial function that is used to calculate the payment for a loan based on a specific number of payments and a constant interest rate. If the repayments are made on a monthly basis, then the yearly interest rate and the number of payments need to be converted to frequency of payment. To do so, the interest rate must be divided by 12, while the number of payments should be multiplied by 12 if they are quoted in years. Figure
Alright, you can ignore the last paragraph. Thank you. So, as mentioned already, the PMT is used to calculate your loan repayment. So, based on the syntax, we need three arguments. So, with the example, let's see here, the example that you can see in this image here, you would basically type the information into cells. So, we have this information here, the loan amount, the interest rate, the how long we have to repay, 2 years and so on, and then we have a formula. So let's recreate that. So loan amount, and say for instance we took a loan of 4 million. The next part is interest rates. So say for instance a 5% interest, and the years to repay. Say they give us 6 years to repay. So we have all our data here. We have the loan amount, we have the interest rate, and we have the years that we have to repay. So yearly payments, I'm going to put yearly payment. We have a reason for that. I'm going to tell you this now. And then monthly payment. So equal PMT, that's the name of the function, and the first part here is it has rate here, so that's going to be your interest rate. Cell B2, so that's going to be B2 here, our rate of 5%. Then we have NPR, that would relate to, let's look at the actual syntax. Number of payments. So interest rate is first. That's referring to the rate that you're seeing. NPR is referring to the number of payments. So the number of payments is going to be 6. So 6 years, comma. And then the last part is the loan amount. So that's going to relate to PV, loan amount, and then we close that there. So remember, you have to put it in the correct order. Otherwise, obviously, you won't get the correct calculation because it'll be the incorrect value. So every year, for that 6 years, I have to pay 788,000. Now, to simplify it, if you guys want to simplify it, if I actually put 4 here and I put 0, you notice we can get a 1 million. So every year I have to pay a 1 million. Notice 4 million, 4 years. So 4 divided by 4 million, that's going to be 1 million a year. So we know the formula is working. We know the function is working. But to add in our interest, say for instance a 5% interest, then every year we have to pay 1.2 million. So imagine a 5% interest. You're paying an additional 128,000 a year when you take a loan. If it's a 10% interest, you're paying an extra 261,000 a year for 4 years. So that you're basically paying them back for that in that 4 years. You're gonna pay them back a whole million if you take a 4 million loan at 10% interest. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So there's not anything too technical about it. It's just you ensuring you put the values in the correct location. So you would usually get the values. If it was an exam question, they would give you the values. If it was an actual bank, they would give you the values also. They might say, well, you would know how much you took, a 10 million loan. They might tell you it's a 10% interest. They might say you have 7 years to pay it back, and that is your yearly payment here. Now, this function here, by default, calculates the yearly payment. On its own, it calculates the yearly payment. Well, basically, if the information that is given is in years, then it will calculate in years. So for example, 10% interest, that's actually 10% per year. Not 10% in general, 10% per year. So the 7 years now, obviously that's 7 years. So all of the information here is already in years. So we don't need to do any conversion or anything with the data. Now, if you want to calculate the monthly repayment, then is when you need to do some conversion, and then is when some maths will start coming in. So it's a simple conversion, and we actually have it right here. If you want to convert the interest rate to months, you are going to divide it by 12. Why are we dividing it by 12?
Sir, because it's 12 months in a year.
Good. That's simple. It's 12 months in a year. So the interest rate is already for the entire year. This 10% is already for the entire year. So we need to know how much it's going to be for the month. So we're going to divide it by the 12. Now, for the year now, we are going to multiply it, the number of payment, which is years, we're going to multiply it by 12. It's the same process because we have 12 months. We need to multiply the years by 12 to get the number of months in those years. So if we were to create the formula now, it would be equal PMT, open bracket, the rate, which is going to be our 10%. So anybody remember, are we multiplying or dividing?
Dividing the 10.
Dividing it, good. So we're dividing it by 12 because we want to get how many months, and then comma. So our next part is the number of payments. So that's going to be 7 or B3, and we're going to multiply that by 12, and then our actual loan amount. So every month we have to pay 166,000. So if we actually create a simple formula to calculate that, if we multiply this by 12, we can notice we get the same value. We didn't. What went wrong? It's interest rate. Anybody know what went wrong? What did I do wrong? What is missing? It's supposed to be the same. Interest rate, number of payments, and loan amounts. Interest rate, number of payments, and the loan amount. Interest rate, B2, number of payments 7, and B1 is the loan amount. B2, interest rate divided by 12. That multiplied by 13. Compare the 12. What went wrong? What went wrong with the calculation? The formula is correct, but if you multiply that by 12, we're supposed to get this value here, logically, because that's in a year. $10 million multiplied. Anyway, that's not the important part, so let's just ignore that and just focus on this part here. I'm not sure why it didn't equate, but the formula is correct though. The function that we create is correct. So the main thing to remember is that if the values are in the years, like for example how we have it here, 10% a year, 7 years, that's yearly values. So when you use the PMT, it is going to do the calculation per year. No conversions. You don't have to do any conversions or anything. Just using it as normal, you get your yearly payment. If you want monthly payment, then you would have to convert. You would have to divide the interest rate by 12, multiply the years by 12 in order to get those months, and basically the same calculation. And this is your monthly repayment now. So if they actually do give you in months, then basically you don't need any conversion. So if, say for instance, they say 1% interest per month, and say they give you 7 times 12. Anybody? 7 times 12, 84. So they give you 84 months. So this formula here now is going to calculate the monthly repayment. So ignore everything outside here and here. This formula now, because we have all our information in months, it is going to give you your monthly repayments. Any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
It gave me the same thing. I don't know why it didn't add up. Either way, but that's basically how PMT functions. It is used to calculate your loan payment. So if your uncle or your parents took a loan, ask them for the information, and you can actually calculate how much they have to repay every month. Alright, if no questions on the PMT, we're going to move on to the rank function. So, you had a question, Akila?
No, sir.
Okay. So the rank function is basically how we have different positions. Say for example, when you're running a race, you have first place, second place, and so on. Or say for instance, final exam came out and you guys get your report cards, and somebody has to get first place with the highest percentage and then second place and so on. So the rank is responsible for giving those positions, saying who is first, who is second, who is third, and so on. That is the purpose of rank. So it looks at data, for example, time, numbers, whatever the case may be, and give a rank. Now, here's a question. Say, for example, in a race, if two persons were to cross the finish line at the same time, what position do they get?
So they would be tied.
They will be tied. So if they're the first to cross the finish line, what position would both of them get?
First.
First.
Technically.
First.
So both of them would get first, or one of them can get first, one can get second?
Sir,
Both of them are going to get first. So rank also works that same way, because that is how you rank things. So the third person that is going to come in now, will he get second? Or what position?
Third.
He's going to get third. So that's basically how rank also works. So if you look at this time here that they have, this time of 3.22 seconds, that person got first. But notice these two here got 23. So both of them got second. And because it is two positions, they're taken up that second and third position. Even though nobody got third, they're taking it up, they're taking up that position. So the next available spot is position 4 or rank 4. So rank also follows that pattern. Alright, so let's read the paragraph now. Shaniqua, could you read for us?
Rank. The syntax is equal sign rank, number whose rank you want to find, range of numbers, order of rank. In later versions of Excel, this function has been named to rank.eq. The syntax is rank.eq, number whose rank you want to find, range of numbers, order of rank. This function produces the position of a number or item in a sorted list so that the first item would have a rank of 1. See section 7.5 for more on sorting data. Note that duplicate numbers are given the same rank.
Continue.
Figure 7.26 illustrates how the final positions are determined in a closely contested sports race with 6 athletes. The range of data from A2 to A7 and B2 to B7 are sorted as a group by the finish times in ascending order. So the person with the fastest time is at the top of the list. The cell range B2 to B7 is named the race times. In cell C2, type equal rank B2 race times 1 and press enter. As number 1 in the function indicates that the list is in ascending order, while 0 is 0 or omitting a number indicates that it is descending. The rank of the first athlete, Matt, is equal
Okay,
rank.
you can pause there. Thank you. So those are the important information to remember that I underlined there. Well, we already talked about that if somebody came in at the same position or if numbers are duplicates, if the values are similar, they're going to get the same rank. Just like if persons came in at the same time, they're going to get the same rank. Now, when you are ranking, you have to sort the data first. So you have to sort the data in a certain order, in ascending order, descending order. So in their example that they're talking about, they sorted it so that the person with the fastest time was at the top compared to the slowest time at the bottom. And with that, they're going to get that rank in order. So we're going to look at that. If you don't sort it, what's going to happen? And so the first thing you have to do is to sort. Now, in the rank function, at the very end, you have to indicate a 1 or a 0. 1 indicates that you would have sorted in ascending order, and a 0 or not putting a 0 is going to put it in descending order. So let's look at an example to see what we're talking about. So we can actually use the example of the grades. So the grades now, the ranked grades, to see who got the highest or what position they got. So firstly, if you notice, the grades are not in any specific order. So I'm going to do equal rank. Actually, I have to name the range first. So if you guys can remember to name a range, you highlight. So I'm going to highlight the data. I'm going to give it a name of grades. Did I show you guys how to name a range? Name a cell already?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I just name a range so that I can use it in the function. So equal rank. Now, as the paragraph mentioned, there are two ranks. There is the old version rank by itself, and then the newer version rank EQ. Now, somebody in a previous class would have asked me if we cannot use rank. Now, yes, you can still use rank, but you can think of rank EQ like a more updated version. So we're using that newer version to do our calculation. So equal rank EQ dot EQ, open bracket. We are going to look, the first syntax is the number. Let's look back at the syntax. So the first part of the syntax is the number whose rank you want to find. That's the first part here. So basically, what do you want to rank? So in this case here, it's going to be cell D2. We want to rank this 40 here. And the second part of the syntax is basically the range. In what range will it be ranked, or what are you comparing it to? So that's going to be, our range is going to be grades, the range that I created. So notice I typed in grades and the entire range was highlighted. And notice the 1 and the 0 here is basically indicated how we want it to be ranked, in descending order or ascending. So we're going to put 0 to test it and close. So this person here got 40, they got 5th position. So if you bring it down, notice our rank. We have rank 5, 7, 2, 5, 9, 1, 7, and so on. So if you notice, it doesn't have an order because we did not sort the grades. So if you don't sort the grades, it's going to rank it correctly, but we're not going to see it in order because we didn't sort the data. So what we need to do is sort the data. Now later on, there's a whole chapter on sorting data. So I'm not going to explain all of this now, but later on we're going to look at sorting data. So I just sorted the data. I gotta change the sorting to descending. Largest to smallest. As we want the highest grade at the top. So 90 is at the top. So obviously 90 got first place. 70, notice both of them got second. 60 is 4. The 240 got 5th. The 230 got 7th. And the 220 got 9. Now if I change it to 1, that's 0 to 1, then that's going to be ascending order. So notice the order of the rank, it changed into what was the one? Into ascending order. So it's basically how you want to put the rank. So in our case, we need it in descending order. That's going to be it. 0. We need it to come down basically, not to come up. So we're going to use 0 or 1 to rank it in that order. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any questions? Any confusions? Any comments?
No, sir.
All right. So, any question, any idea as to why we had to name the range? Anybody thought of that? Why did we have to name the range? And why couldn't we just have done this here? That. Anyone thought of that? Anyone thought of that question?
So, because when you name the range and you put it in, it will automatically do all the stuff on the grades. But if you don't, you have to do it individually.
Yeah, I think it. So we're talking about when you what do you mean you have to do it individually?
So like you have to put in like you have to put in C2 and C3 one after the other instead of when it's named it's in a group form.
Okay. I think you have the right idea. It's actually one of our future topic. It has to deal with relative and absolute addressing. So when we get to that part there, I'm gonna explain more about why in certain cases you have to name a range. Because if you notice, let me copy back of the formula. If you notice that when I brought down, remember I autofilled the formula, I copied it. And if you notice, I had a D2 here. And if we check the last one, it's not, sorry, yeah, D2. And if we check the last cell, it's not D2 anymore. It changed. It changed to D11. And the grades didn't change. And if we had actually used the range, for example, if we had highlighted like this here, and we brought it down, it's not going to work anymore. And if we look at the range shifted. That has to do with relative and absolute addressing. So when we get to that part, I'll explain why it shifted and why some cases we have to actually name a range. Alright, so our last function is going to be the sum function. And let's see. Well, there's a bit of information there, so let's read the paragraph. So, Randlin, can you read for us?
The syntax is equal to sum range of cells. If you wanted to add together the numbers in cells B1 to B175, you could use the plus operator to add the cells B1 plus B2 plus B3, etc. This would take you a long time. It is much quicker and easier to use the sum function. The sum function can be used in 4 ways. Adding values for a sum, for example, equal to sum, open brackets 1, 4, 9. Adding cell references, for example, equal to sum, B3, C3, F4. Adding ranges of values, for example, equal to sum, C3, colon, C10. Adding a combination of the above options, for example, equal to sum, B3, C4, colon, C10, 12.
Alright, thank you. So, if you notice here, we can use the sum function to basically add any form of values. We can type in the value, we can add the cell, we can add a range, or a combination of any one of those. So, they gave the example of if we were to create a formula, it would look something like this here. If you were to add a range of numbers, if you were to add B1 to B175, if it was a formula, we would have to type in all of those cells individually. But that would take a long time. So the sum function helps us to add all of those cells without us having to type all of those cells. So if we want to say, for example, add all the grades, so sum, so we can say instead of sum, total, so we have the total grades, so equal sum, and we can highlight the range, or maybe even use the name range that I created, and it added up all the grades, and I have a total of 470. Now, as it showed, you can even put numbers inside of it, so I can put 7, comma 4 comma 3, and it would calculate that also. I could even add numbers inside here also. So I can do 5 comma grades. So now I have 475, and I could even add in that cell that I created over there, comma this cell over here, and now I have 489. So it basically adds whatever is in the brackets, but notice we have to separate it by the commas for it to differentiate it. Any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Alright. So we're gonna wrap up here for today. So in review of what we looked at for today, remember there are 4 things you need to remember when it comes to a function. What is the name? What is it used for? Or what is it do? What is the syntax? And what is the arguments? So we looked at today that the count if, it counts based on a criteria. The criteria could be anything, any form of question. It could be a word, it could be a number. We looked at the if. Remember that situation with Auntie Don. It looks at a test. Is it something equal to? Is it less than? And if the test is true, whatever is in this true section here is going to be carried out, and the false is going to be ignored. But if the answer is false, then that is going to be carried out, and the true is going to be ignored. So remember, for this true and false, anything could be inside of it. It could be a number, it could be a calculation, it could be a word. Whatever is there will be carried out. We looked at max, which calculates the maximum value. Min calculates the minimum. PMT is a financial function that is used to calculate your loan payments. Remember the conversion, if you have to convert it to months, and by default it will calculate based on the type of data. So if they give you yearly data, it's going to calculate the yearly repayment. If they give you monthly data, it's going to calculate the monthly payment. But if they give you in years, then obviously you will have to convert. And then we looked at rank, which ranks a certain value. Remember, duplicate values get the same rank. And we use 0 for descending and 1 for ascending. And then lastly, we looked at sum, which is used to add values, cells, ranges, whatever. It would add everything together. Alright, any questions before we conclude?
No, sir.
Alright, if you guys don't have any questions, that is the end of tonight's class. Enjoy the rest of your night.
It's about it.